what are some tips and strategies that have helped you disrupt the traditional markets, and why is it so important to have an outsider perspective to an industry like real estate when it's when it's long overdue for evolution and change?
I think the thing that's always helped me is that I have a couple things going for me. One is patience. You're not going to disrupt anything. I mean, VaynerMedia is in year 11. I've really run it for 9 years. First 2 years were more AJ. I was still doing the wine stuff and writing Crush It. So you got to take the long game. Side is not going to, disrupt all these big names, Sotheby's, Remax, Keller. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It takes a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. So first, I've always had the long game in mind. That's one. Two, the weirdest thing about me that me and my team or my best friends or family always laugh about is the Garyvee thing has so become a thing that there's a lot of people that don't realize who Gary Vaynerchuk is, right? Like the person that is actually, I haven't done tea with Garyvee and, I've done it once in every 2 weeks lately because I'm operating, nobody's watching me when I'm on the phone right now at 8:30 in the morning, 8 to 8:30 in the morning with, major executives in Dubai, or from 8:30 to 9 when I'm having a finance meeting and making decisions on, restructuring our debt. And, they don't see the operators. So I think the other thing that has made me disrupt the wine and marketing industry is actual operational talent, like genuinely being a businessman, not playing one on Instagram, right? And so I think, and it's really worked for me in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like people continue to underrate me. I can't stop talking about sports cards right now. I don't know if you ever grew up collecting those, Alex, but you need to get re-educated. 2 years ago, I tell every one of my friends, and I'm talking like my brother and Tyler and Lou and Ryan Harwood from Gallery Media Group and David Levy, who I've done business with, and Sam Ben Ruby, people I've made money for in investing in companies. And I told all of them to get into sports cards, and nobody did. They dabbled, but nobody went hard. And it's because I'm actually still underrated. There's the part that has allowed me to disrupt is actual skill. And then being really, the next part I would say is being a culturally led CEO. To disrupt, you need continuity. Mm-hmm. You need the same people around you. You can't spend all your time retraining. And I think that one of the things that's really worked for me is I built families. I've built family at Facebook, at VaynerMedia, and at Wine Library, people that are there for 8, 12, 15 years. And that matters. So having compassion and empathy and being a true leader. So, I think finally, and by far the most important reason I've won is I'm 100% consumer centric. What you plan on disrupting is like, hey, Karen, you're a great agent here in Dallas. You're paying way too much tax to these logos. You should be making more of the money because you're the winner. It's run through my mind in the last 2, 3 years, 4 years of like, oh, if I launch Vayner, real estate, and I take less commission and I build a machine to build up everyone's personal brand, I will win. Mm-hmm. So, I think that whoever brings the most value, VaynerMedia is doing a lot more for Kraft and Pepsi and GE and Chase and Diageo and on and on and on than what our competitors are for the same amount of money. It's not super complicated. Wine Library sold wine at a better price for customers and had better customer service. And so, I think it's that. And then I think, and then when you layer the fact that I've built a personal brand and bring a lot of awareness to the things I do, and even the way I've built the personal brand, in a lot of ways, I myself undermine my own quality because of the hyperbole, the high energy. A lot of people aren't sure if I'm even real or not. And so, I think those are kind of the ingredients when you ask that question that come to mind.
Awesome. So you said personal brand, and so you always talk about attention and eyeballs,
Yes.
right? And knowing that in the future. And I remember you talked about how, like in the real estate industry, because there's so much money involved and such a low barrier to entry, that it just attracts a lot of C players, right? And so,
Yes.
as a brokerage of the future, we want to develop, focus on developing the A players. And so,
I love that.
well, what are some opportunities that you might see in for this to grow and change and evolve as we build up leaders, particularly in this like COVID times, with marketing and branding, and just kind of what advice do you have there?
My advice is actually to stay the course, but to cut out non-potential A winners along the way so that you hold up that equity. The biggest vulnerability you have if you actually mean building the A leaders is not taking the money from the obvious C and D players.
Right.
That's the actual answer.
Yeah, that's the truth.
That's the actual truth. And that's hard for a business that, has the ability to take money from B and C players.
Right.
So I think that's a discipline thing on your end.
It's about net fulfillment over net worth. And really, it's a methodology. The message is a methodology for everyone to look at their life from now to the grave, right? And use all their resources at the right time to get the maximum they can out of life. So
from a happiness ROI versus how much is sitting in the bank account, from a fulfillment, like how do you define it? Like, am I supposed to be happy? Am I supposed to be like enriched? Like, what's the perspective?
So I believe that the summation of your experiences and the experiences you choose to have and when are correlated with your happiness and your fulfillment, right? So I solve for those experiences and making sure that, you go to work, right? Part of it is you love what you do. I can tell that you love what you do, getting your message out, right? But part of it is to pay the bills for survival. We need to survive. Yep. And then the rest of it is for experiences that we want to have. And a lot of times people become successful, they go on autopilot, right? And they're just like success, piling in the money, and they're going through life like they're driving home, right? And you just all of a sudden home. You don't remember how you turns you took or anything. You're just home.
And boom, you're 74. You've got some dollars in your bank account, but was it great? Is really the question.
Correct. And I want people to have the biggest ride they can have and the experiences they choose. So I want them to get off autopilot. I want them to recognize that their body deteriorates, their mental facilities deteriorate, and certain experiences are meant for certain times in their life. And that means,
so is that similar to, a lot of people get mad at me when I talk about high risk behavior in your 20s, because it's just more practical to, go for the 3 or 4, so many kids at 22 are like, fuck, I have to get real now. It's over. And I've really struggled with that, because I'm like, no, this is exactly the time you do whatever you really think you want to do, because the regret is devastating, and the practicality of doing it now while you've got 4 bozo roommates versus a husband and 2 children, or a wife and 3 children, or responsibilities. I've always been fascinated of 22 to 30 years old. I think people completely misplay it. I've really focused on that range. It seems like you're focusing on a very similar vibe in the macro.
Yeah, I'm taking from that 22 to 30, and I'm taking it all the way to the grave. And I 100% agree with you on taking. I always tell people, think of the most risk you can possibly take in that time frame, and then add a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with that. My risk, and Bill, it takes all shapes and sizes. My risk was, I knew in my brain and my chemicals that I was a beast, but I also desperately wanted to fucking come through for my parents, because I loved them so much. I was so grateful. It was so entrenched in me, like where they grew up. Both of them lost a parent at a young age. They grew up in Russia, and I knew I had it. And so for me, the high risk was build a humongous company for my dad from 22 to 32 and have nothing and start over. That's risky. Other people's version is they've always wanted to be a rapper, and they just need to go to the south side of Atlanta and go for it, instead of getting a job at Goldman Sachs or going to grad school.
Listen, people, even when they fail in those ventures, they are enriched. They learn from that experience, and they have so much more to add in their relationships and future professional endeavors, etc.
Bill, what about for the people that are not destined to be rich, but also want to be enriched and have this? So talk to me real quick for the 98% that are going to make 70 to 48 to 130,000 a year, from a resource standpoint, what can they get out of this hypothesis? Because obviously they're going to have different, your background right now is something people are only going to see in their life, not live, because they're not going to have that financial capacities potentially. How should they be thinking about it?
Well, let me work backwards on that.
Please.
One thing I say to people, everywhere I go, every exotic place I go, there's somebody doing it for 1/1000th the price.
Correct.
They got their backpack, they're couch surfing, they find a way, and they're having a very rich experience too. They're not having the exact same one I'm having.
And by the way, I apologize. I really apologize, but you just fired me up because I'm just thinking here. I'm like, I'd rather go to some fancy place. I'm so dirt that I'm like, I'd rather go somewhere and prove to myself that I can fucking sell fruit. But then if I like surfing, I don't like surfing, but I'm like, oh, I want to surf here. Well, I'm just going to go and fucking bleed and work some shit job so I can surf in the mornings. To your point, I may not roll up in a fucking yacht and surf, but I'm still gonna surf.
Gary, one of the most liberating things I did was panhandle on the street as an experiment. It was humbling, but it also freed me. It was like, I can make it.
When did you do that?
I did it about 5 years ago in Vegas. It was about 5 years ago in Vegas. No, maybe 6 in Vegas. And it was scary. It was humbling. I eventually would give the money back to other people and say, hey, just help somebody else down the road, because I didn't want to be taking money.
You were testing the game. Yeah, it's what I do with garage sailing. Like I go in garage sale, but then whatever profits are made, I'm trying to show everybody how to do it, but then I donate the profits. I get it.
Yeah, and so for the people, life still, you have resources and you still have choices, and when you have limited resources, you want to allocate them properly throughout your life. You don't want to be delaying gratification till you're 75 on certain experiences when either you won't enjoy them as much or you won't even want to do them, right? Like, I don't I'm not, you wake me up to go to a club and glow stick it, I'm gonna be like, I'm going to sleep. When I was 22, all you have to say is, hey, there's going to be girls. I'm up, I'll be there in 5 minutes, right? Or you just can't do it, right? You just can't, you can't climb Machu Picchu at 75. You don't have the watts per kilogram of energy you need to get up those steps, right? And so we don't want to be making mistakes in allocating when we have these experiences. And so I think people will get a lot of value out of making sure that they time bucket their experiences and not have a bucket list. That means, hey, I don't put things to go climb Mount Everest. I don't want to climb Mount Everest, even though David Goggins is trying to get me to climb Mount Everest. After I have kids, you can't go spend 2 months, when you have toddlers on the side of Mount Everest getting acclimated. And so when you look and you get off autopilot and you think about the totality of your life, why you're saving, right? You're saving for these experiences. So we want to make sure we put these experiences in the right time frame. If you were in heaven and God said, hey, here's your resources and you can have all these experiences, but here's the trick. You got to get the order right. A lot of people are on autopilot, not getting the order right, not doing the things in their 20s when they should be in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And when you take a step back and think about the totality of your life and you order these things right, you're going to get more fulfillment. You're going to get a better ride relative to, you just being on autopilot and not getting this message in the book. I don't, you don't even have to buy the book. You just need to get the message. And I think a lot of the messages overlaps with what you optimize for. You optimize a lot in people in their business or in their marketing, and you're the master at that. And this is kind of like a high level total life optimization.
Being the king of content. We have a ton of content. It's kind of all over the place. Because we have content from the farm, we have content from roasting, we have content from our wholesale, direct to consumer, and our Instagram, we just started focusing on it in the past year. It's kind of all over the place, but it's a story. That I like. Is that okay?
That's more than okay. I think the biggest issue for most people is they're too romantic about this ideological cohesiveness on their social. Awesome. I mean, go look at my social. If I'm, I appreciate. Yeah, I'm all over. I might be the most all over the place. It might be a cartoon. It might be a long video. It's a picture. There's a quote that I think yesterday I put a picture of me shirtless in 8th grade. It's completely all over the place because it's the truth of the story. I'm not trying to build a fucking art project. I'm trying to fucking communicate.